drives cars, he stares and cares. From drive to La La Land, holds our hearts in his hand. And every road leaves his mark. Ryan Gosling lights up the dark.
Hello and welcome to Good Boys Gone Bland, Season 10, Episode 3, Lars and the Real Girl. I'm your co-host, Denali.
I'm your real co-host, Ryan. Yep. There's the real Jace. I ordered this one. What boxes did we check when we ordered this, Denali?
I picked
I got the Barbie paddle hands. I remember I paid extra for that.
I got Frisbee player.
Oh, nice. I like tries out, like not afraid to try out like new haircuts.
Yeah.
You know?
He says his name is Jace and he's a co-host and he's happy to be here.
Great. Let's just put him in the corner.
Okay.
We'll put a microphone
I'll
up
prop
next
him
to
up.
him. In case some.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I left my me doll on the seat. Push that out of the way.
Wow, that was actually pretty realistic.
Oh my God, Jace. That's great. I've been wanting to get a me doll to kind of like replace me for like, meetings and stuff and for.
It would work on like Zoom.
I think so.
Well, people do that. They record themselves in like a loop and play it as their background. I've seen that.
That's really great. Welcome, Jace. What's going on? How you doing?
Yeah, how are you, man?
How are you, Jace?
Since.
I just feel like we don't ask each other what's going on. I feel like we should just, let's zoom in on one of our people.
Yeah. It's funny that you would ask that. I took a mental health day on Friday because my boss said something that pissed me off so much that I was angry into yesterday and was 5% away from quitting my job in a blind fury. And now I feel better, and we watched this movie, and I don't really, I'm not technically, I think, on an emotional level or like mental level with Lars, but Lars made me feel better.
Yeah, you were feeling something from this movie. That's I didn't know that, Jace. I didn't know you had that going on. Now
really
I'm glad
great
I asked.
timing for Denali asking how you're doing, because you're usually doing pretty good.
Generally pretty good, yeah. But I was in the pit of despair, angry all day, and then I wanted to make ramen, so I went to Asian Family Mart up on Aurora. And to our listeners who are in the future, we're recording this the day after the Lunar New Year, and it was a fucking shit show in that grocery store. And I hate grocery stores, and everyone was driving like shit. And I got there. And I almost went nuclear. I had to stop in the snack aisle for 5 minutes. I was like, oh, God.
Wow. Well, anyway. But did the ramen cheer you up? Was it a good ramen?
It was okay.
Mid-tier?
It was the movie that cheered you up.
Yeah.
It was seeing RG just be unapologetically himself on film for 90 minutes.
Well, Jace, I'm glad I asked. And then Ryan, you better have nothing going on this week. I guess I'll ask you next week.
No, I'm doing really nice.
No,
I'm
it's
great.
not this. It's not
Ryan,
this episode, right? This was Jace. This was Jace's spotlight.
I had a big turnaround.
So,
okay, that's okay.
Anyways, back to the movie. Do you? We follow format on the show. I'm sorry, Ryan.
Ryan, we just hit, okay?
Yeah.
On the recording mark, 9 minutes and 4 seconds. There's no more time.
We don't have time to talk about your problems, Ryan. You are a good friend. Do you want to talk about your problems?
No. I agree. We have a strict time limit, and I would.
No, we do. We have a job. We have a job to do.
I'm not
folks.
more important than the whole. The individual is not more important than the whole.
Yeah, and listen, I keep a lot in too.
Oh, I know, baby. I know.
I'm not gonna bring it on the show. The folks want to listen to the movie, and they don't want to hear about us. So I'm gonna.
Let's just go. Let's just go in the movie then.
Let's get into the movie.
I like this because I think this session of the podcast is going to make people feel like the movie made me feel. Really awkward. Maybe screaming.
Right.
Fast forward. And the tension is palpable.
Is this the weirdest intro we've had so far, vibes-wise?
Well, we're also editing out a lot.
I was editing out what, brother?
This is great.
This is great content. Folks, we are a podcast that marathons and reviews 10 movies of a similar actor and subject. And this season, where are we, Jace? Where are we?
We're with our buddy Ryan Gosling,
Yeah.
not Ryan Reynolds. I'll say it every week
Yeah, fuck Ryan Reynolds.
because I keep calling him Ryan Reynolds to people, even after I mentioned it last week. Ryan Gosling, a star.
Ryan Gosling.
Beautiful.
And he's in Gosling's garden.
Gar-
We're in Gosling's garden.
We're in the metaphorical land of Gosling's garden, which abuts the mansion, the movie mansion, and we are currently helping our shotgun-carrying neighbor protect his garden from Gosling's gophers.
Uh-huh.
We're protecting his
gopher
Gosling's
army.
gourds.
The gourds he sends on a catapult.
Gosling's
Gold.
Gosling's gold.
Gosling's gold. Are we
Gosling's
going to steal that?
I think.
I think we get property rights after this, and they go subterranean.
Underneath movie, audience cares most about our lore. So I think I'll review the previous episodes and edit as needed. But folks, welcome to episode 3 of Gosling's Garden. We're reviewing 10 Gosling movies. Why? Because he makes good movies.
Does.
He makes great movies, and we all love the guy. And I kind of wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about Gosling's career trajectory because have you guys read about this dude's childhood? About like what this dude was like as a little kid? Like he sounds.
I know about the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
Yeah, the Mickey Mouse Club is amazing. There's clips online of this. That was one of his first gigs, right? He was with what was it? Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, and Ryan. Like he talked a lot about how he felt kind of like the less talented kid and they would feature him less. And it's like, you got JT on the stage, he's making all these music and he's dancing, and then Britney Spears and he's like, and I'm Ryan. And remember he was feeling very
that kind of, I mean, in many ways that kind of attracts my life as a Ryan.
Well,
he
worked out okay, Ryan.
Yeah.
Well, different heights, I guess, but yeah.
Listen, right, remember what I said earlier about how we don't have time to kind of talk about Ryan's life? Maybe next week, dude. Maybe we'll have a slot free depending on the movie we pick.
Okay.
Yeah, so don't worry, dude. We'll get to you. So this week, we got to focus. Well, I read Ryan Gosling, he had a troubled childhood. He got in trouble for throwing steak knives at kids at recess in first grade, which I think is hilarious.
How do you get steak knives at recess? What are you...
They're Canadian, man.
We living in a different time?
I think he brought them from home. I don't think he was like, they were like, we got sous vide in the cafeteria today.
Guys, new game. I came up with it at home, okay? Yeah. Stole my mom's knives. I'm going to throw them at you.
And you're going to run. He said he was inspired by Rambo First Blood. And was throwing knives.
I watched a video that came out recently about, like, does he know his first lines? Or not first lines. Like, does he remember his lines from his movies?
Yeah.
And he was guessing some of them and was telling stories about, like, each movie and stuff. And, yeah, he did mention the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse thing as, like, he's kind of a less talented kid. But he also mentioned, like, in the Notebook, when they were making it, they're like, nobody's going to watch this.
Wow.
And when he was doing Drive, like, he almost didn't get the part in Drive because he did a terrible reading and stuff.
Wow. That movie would not have... I mean, if we ever do Drive, we can talk about it.
Sorry, wasn't he... I thought he was chosen specifically for Drive because of one of his performances.
But then when he met the director, he flopped.
Oh. Like, Ryan, you're being a little emotive.
Yeah, well, he starts... but he starts reading the lines, too, and he's like, I'm doing terrible. I'm not, he starts like reading them and putting emphasis and like the wrong words and stuff, and has to like restart the card like for this video of lines that he's delivered in movies. They hand him a random card with a line on it, and he's like, there's, it's like really weird.
There's a lot of stories like this of him kind of flubbing roles. There's kind of the famous Lovely Bones story, which we don't have to get into. But like he's kind of an odd guy, and it's not someone you would expect to succeed. I think that's part of his appeal.
I was going to try to ask this earlier. One, what age was he with the Mickey Mouse Playhouse thing? And two, what's the vector for like a Canadian to become a child star? I know that like Vancouver has a lot of productions and has a lot of acting. But
I think he moved to Orlando because he answered a casting call when he was like 11 or 12. And he said him and JT were roommates. They're fucking tight. And JT's mom became his legal guardian.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. during that period, I guess for 2 years they like lived together. And this is another like, and I think we'll get into this, but Ryan Gosling's weird affect, like he has kind of an unplaceable accent. He said he developed that on purpose. Like he said he thought a Canadian accent wasn't like cool enough, so he studied Marlon Brando when he was like 12 and decided
cool.
to talk like that his whole life.
Marlon Brando, the person who famously made up his own way of talking.
Yeah. It's like you see him talk, and that's why it's so hard to give an impression of him like we were trying to do it previous seasons. And like there's a scene in Drive where he's just like, I don't hold a gun, I drive. And you kind of hear the weird intonations in there.
Horror.
I guess my point is he's a weird guy, and I think people are fascinated by him. This movie, to kind of get in, we're not going to get into it yet, but it deals with a lot of early internet stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like early internet Wild West stuff, ordering stuff off the mail.
Yeah, it reminded me of the time where like you had to be a little bit technologically advanced to even get on the internet, or like know how to, like, because I was on the internet when I was a kid, but like it was to type in RuneScape into ask.com, which we saw in this, and
I was thinking about that.
So it was, I'm not sure if it was set. It wasn't set when it came out, right? Like 2009 or so. It was set.
Yeah, it might have been 99
maybe,
or something.
Yeah, 10 years earlier. But
I
also,
thought
it was
it was
also like
set
somewhere in the
2007.
Midwest.
You can
right?
believe it's 2007, Jace?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was somewhere in the Midwest. They just might be 5-10 years behind technologically.
Yeah, and there was a sense, even when we were in middle school, like in 07-ish, there was a sense of kind of like, oh, I was on the internet last night. And people were like, ooh, what? Like, there's kind of like this aspect of being on the internet. It's weird. It's a place you go to. It's not something you're surrounded by. And I was going to
also, I was going to say, like, remember when we were watching Nickelodeon as kids? It would always say, please be supervised when you're on the internet by a
ask your
parent.
parents' permission, yeah.
Yeah. But that's because they're telling kids to go on the internet. But now it's a given that those kids are going to have TikTok accounts.
It is kind of strange. And looking at this movie, I was going to kind of ask you guys, like, what was your early experience with early internet? Like, did you guys have, everyone has kind of early internet memories. We have some of those memories together, being on Omegle or Chat Roulette kind of early on. And I remember even at Jace's house in his basement, we would fire up Omegle and sift through, dozens of people jerking off and weird bots and people. Yeah.
My internet experience was pretty tame. We'd do chat rooms and stuff, RuneScape, like I mentioned. But then I moved to like kind of rural California and kind of got off of the internet for a couple years. We still had, internet, but it wasn't Wi-Fi. And then when I came back to Alaska in 9th grade, so maybe this might be like 2007, 2008 or something, Jace helped me get up to speed pretty quickly with all the weird stuff on the internet that they had found access to when you were in middle school with actual, internet capabilities.
Jace was early 4chan, weren't you? Weren't you like a...
No, Thomas was early 4chan.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
It was not, I think there was like one board that was like relatively tame, but still not something that like, I think Michael and I would use the Stumble Upon.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That would
Yeah.
just send you to like,
Upon.
to random places.
That was kind of like 10th grade for me.
Yeah, which is relatively late. So I think what I wanted to say earlier about this is that the internet advanced so quickly that it is actually kind of hard maybe to place this movie because I have the monitors at my work are pretty old, right? And for a while, all tower cases and monitors looked pretty simple. But, I think the earliest access to computers and thus the internet like regularly was like a Mac computers, like those big, colorful, semi-translucent Macs from a computer lab. And those were really expensive.
Yeah.
So for I think it pretty readily placed between 2000 and 2006 because it was like the internet was just like
Yeah.
Some people
I also
didn't
think
keep up.
each person's experience with the internet can vary in that time period. I agree, it's super hard to place because like we saw the character in this movie using ask.com, and that might be, you never know, he might be one of the tail end users and that's all he knows how to do on the internet. Or he could be like a pioneer and be going there before anybody else, before maybe Google was popular.
Yeah, I remember my dad because he was a really early computer user. He would use like Ask Jeeves and Dogpile and stuff like that. And he would bring me downstairs. He'd be like, "Hey, Denali, check this out," and I'll be like 6 years old. And he's on like Ebum's World, and I'm seeing this video of this guy with like a bottle rocket up his ass. He's like, watch this, and the bottle rocket explodes, and the guy's ass explodes. And he's like, "Isn't that fucking crazy?" And I have all these random memories of me being called downstairs to watch like random dudes' asses explode, or like weird like shit like that, or like, oh, look at this guy threw a pair of scissors at his friend, it stuck in his arm.
Wow.
And like I think it kind of shaped my psyche.
Yeah,
on some
that
kind
explains
of
a lot.
subconscious level. I mean, at 6, I thought it was like hilarious. Like I thought it was like a cartoon. But like I'm like looking back, and like that kind of shit we got exposed to so fucking early, I think. I mean, there was shit kind of like, like,
Yep.
Yeah. You guys were people I would go to with questions, and you guys would know the answer. I probably wouldn't ask you them, but I would like hang around you guys and have these questions floating around my brain and be listening to what you guys are talking about, because I might have like overheard something at school or saw a reference on one of the more tame websites I would go on, and then we didn't know what it was, so I would kind of like have these weird kind of dark web-esque like ideas of the internet back when like that was a kind of a concept. And you guys were not, I knew you guys weren't like into that stuff, but I knew you guys like knew about it. And
we were like oracles. Like we would show you visions.
I was pretty tame, and you guys were the keepers of knowledge.
I remember, Jace, you would show me fucked up shit too on your laptop, where you'd be like, you want to fucking, like, you were the
first time I went over to Jace's, he was like, "We got to find this video."
And I think I both apologize and I welcome. I give you.
Yeah. This is we're dragging his character through the mud. But it is.
That's what happens when you get like. I mean, we had in early high school. Or coming back to Alaska for high school. I remember like freshman year winter. Like my mom's best friend in the military at the time started playing World of Warcraft, and I did really well in school. And dividends came around, and I was like, I want to play World of Warcraft 2. Could I get a gaming laptop?
You bought that big Alienware laptop.
Yeah, and then at that point, I have, unfettered access to the internet at all times, uncontrollable. I'm more tech savvy than my mom. And that only thing that I think I didn't ever experience, and I'm not truly interested in, like a lot of people I think older than us experienced forums or utilized forums for communication on topics, for hobbies, that type of thing. I come across forums all the time when I'm Googling things now or trying to find something, but I've never participated once in a forum message board style communication thing. And I think I missed it. I'm kind of sad that I missed out on that.
It's still active. Bedandbreakfastforsale.com is the only forum. If you want to list your bed and breakfast, you got to put it on there.
Fuck this guy's scrambled eggs. This place sucks.
Edited. I went back and tried the scrambled eggs. They were okay. They're all right.
Yeah, I was on a little bit of the gaming forums at a really young age. I would kind of be part of that. I was also on Xfire. I don't know if you guys remember.
Oh, God.
Xfire, where it's like instant messaging for gamers. It was kind of like really early Discord. But I remember I made friends playing Halo through Xfire. And I remember there was one guy in particular. His name's Quad X, and he's out there somewhere in the world. But he's 19 at the time. And I was 11, and we didn't know each other's ages for a long time. We were kind of just like typing all summer. We talk about anime and music and like cool gaming. We play games together and shit. And I remember one day where he was like, we were talking about our lives, and he was like, "Yeah, I got work later, blah blah blah." And he's like, "How old are you, man?" Like I was wondering. And he's like, I'm 19, just still trying to figure out college and shit. And I remember I told him I was 11, and I just saw like a pause. It was like a long pause for Quad X. And he just types, "What the fuck?" Like he was so
he thought you were like a 30-year-old he was going to for like career advice.
It's in some ways I was kind of like, wow, I was talking to this 19-year-old, we're like buds. And like we kept in touch like for a little while after that, but I know that instantly changed. Like he's like, I'm talking to a fucking 11-year-old.
Did you ever give him advice? Did you ever like tell him to do something?
I have no idea what I've told him. Like we would talk though, and I'm sure at some point where I was like, oh yeah, try
nah,
this, man.
You
Like,
shouldn't take that. You shouldn't take that crap from that person. You should totally quit.
quit your job. Tell your boss to get fucked, dude. And I remember I told my dad that, and he thought it was so fucking funny that I was talking to this guy. So Quad X, if you're out there somewhere, man, you're probably, I don't know, he's probably in his like 30s or 40s now.
It's so there's like some leveling of the play. I feel like then I think vernacular is the right word. The vernacular between you and him in the early internet, because text hadn't developed to the level it has now, could be similar enough. I feel like now you would know. You would absolutely fucking know. You'd be like,
someone would be like skibby dibby or whatever.
Skibby dibby. Yeah, like even being on Discord now, you can tell when someone is a teenager. Like,
I'm not on anything on. Okay, let's be very clear.
Yeah.
This whole Discord thing is weird. Like, I'm only on your guys'
Discord
stuff.
Communities are in, bro.
I know, it's weird. Like, that's whenever anybody's like, oh yeah, I was on this Discord page. It's like, I don't know. It kind of seems kind of 4chan-y.
It's like early chat room shit.
Yeah.
It's like message boards.
Yeah.
Really. I mean,
and it can go in that fucking direction, Ryan. It definitely can.
That's what I kind of mean. Weren't like war secrets linked somewhere on Discord or something?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my War Secrets Discord that I'm on with a lot of teens. Anyways, well, we should probably get into the movie.
Yeah, let's
it's a lot of reminiscing of trauma we witnessed on YouTube.
and remember, listeners, send us your most fucked up pre-2010 internet
please.
stories.
Oh yeah, do that.
What?
I thought you could say
wild
links.
Send us your fucked up Tor browser web links to where you can hire an assassin. That's actually just an FBI sting.
Well, folks, we watched. Oh, I guess it's my movie, right? I was looking at you, Jace. I don't know why. Lars and the Real Girl this week. Let's get into the movie. Why not, dog? 2007. This is we're looking at post Notebook Ryan Gosling. This is the point where he's trying to take on weird roles, trying to build his career into something that's kind of interesting. Not just a heartthrob, not just doing his Goosebumps movies. But let's see here. Ryan Gosling is a strange little man who lives in like a garage of his brother's house, right? He's very reclusive. He's very socially awkward. People are worried about him, especially his sister-in-law. She's like, man, he doesn't form bonds with people. He runs away anytime someone tries to talk to him. But one day, record scratch, he does end up in a relationship, and it's a relationship with a anatomically correct sex doll. He orders it off the internet, and he starts bringing it everywhere with him, much to everyone's alarm. And the movie is kind of about how they navigate seeing this guy that they all like and they all kind of feel for act so strangely around them. And how do they come together and maybe get him the help he needs and maybe just see how he can kind of navigate this weird situation. And I think that can kind of set us up for what happens in this movie. And I kind of wanted to ask, like, Ryan, you said you watched this before. Is this all your guys' second watches, first watches?
Second.
Oh, you see this before?
I've seen it before, yeah.
Oh, first for me.
Yeah, same. First
I
watch.
actually watched it right after a breakup for the first time. Yeah. I was just alone in like my first apartment in college, and it was winter, and not ideal. Let's say from the get-go that this is like it's a happy movie, but the content is sad.
Yeah, it is. It reminds me of the movie Her,
yes,
where it's melancholy, but it has a sense of humanism. Like it makes you feel like you're connected. Jace, have you seen Her?
Have we watched it together?
No, we haven't.
No. It's Joaquin Phoenix
point.
falling in love with the operating system on his phone.
Oh.
If we do a Joaquin season, that would be a great movie and a great season. What the fuck? It's a great movie. But I mean, Ryan, it's not like maybe the worst in terms of kind of what ends up happening and kind of how this movie touches on a lot of different things. But I mean, I could see like how it could cut very close to the bone of what you're dealing
The
with.
problem is watching it in a situation like that, like
Totally,
in a pretty low point in your life. Is at that point you're thinking to yourself, man, is my life ever going to get better again, or am I going to be alone for the rest of my life?
Oh gosh, yeah.
And then you watch
yeah.
a movie where Ryan Gosling is alone, so he orders a
Yeah.
sex doll and pretends that it's real for like a year.
Oh god.
And even though he's not lonely at the end of the movie,
You
can't
don't wanna
shake
be
that
this guy.
feeling from the first 45 minutes, and you're still crying to yourself.
Like, how does this guy recover? Like, let's say he starts dating like 10 years later, and they're like looking through old photos, and they're like, oh yeah, that's when he dated a sex doll for 6 months. Like,
I think
Interesting.
this is such a small town
yeah.
like environment. The premise or like the implication is not that he's gonna get on The Bachelor and he's gonna go meet someone and bring him back to the hometown and they're gonna learn all about his life. No, if he's gonna date someone, it's someone from this town.
Right. And that's kind of what it implicates.
That's the whole point of the movie, really. But like, the movie isn't about him nearly as much as it is about the town.
Yeah.
And like how the movie is telling you, like, if someone like this enters your life, you should try to first start with a point of acceptance or understanding. This movie was not a comedy. Let's be very clear. It did not play him dating a sex doll up for general laughs. This was not a Weekend at Bernie's situation.
Yeah. And you would expect it to be like when you see the cover, you see kind of like the concept, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, here we go. Like you think he's gonna.
There's funny
go a certain way.
moments.
Yeah, for
like
sure.
like very early before he buys the doll, he goes to church, and at this point you think he's almost nonverbal because he's only talked to like his family.
Yeah.
And he's really uncomfortable around his brother's wife who's pregnant. Very, very uncomfortable. Like won't even say a word to her. And then he goes to church. This is a very small town, and everybody goes like the same church. And he's there, and he's like helping people out. You understand that he's like a really nice person, and this is like he's just kind of socially awkward. But around people he knows and people who need help, he's like very willing to interact with them. And so at the end of this interaction, he helps some lady carry like a big thing of flowers to her car.
Yeah.
And it's because someone's in the hospital that they know. And so he puts them in the trunk of the car for her and everything. And she's like, oh, you need to meet someone nice. Blah, blah, blah. Why don't you have a girlfriend? Here, take this rose and give it to someone that you like or someone that, you think is cool. And he's just kind of awkwardly holding the rose. And then he turns around and there's a female character his age standing behind him, Margot. And she's like, hi, Lars. He goes, and he looks at the rose and he goes, and hucks it.
Whips it.
Like just absolutely yeets it off the screen.
And it was a really funny throw.
It was a gut buster. Yeah. So there's moments in it like that are funny, but they still tell a story.
Amber and I had a good convo last night about kind of what Ryan Gosling, the roles he takes, because I think Ryan Gosling is kind of the poster child for male loneliness. Because I think a lot of his roles, he plays someone who's super socially detached and maybe isn't dealing with it in a healthy way. And sometimes he kind of comes to like a certain point to kind of help him along in that journey, or at least find a sense of human connection. Because, yeah, I mean, in this movie, he's dealing with isolation. He's not dealing with his emotions. He's too afraid to kind of like reach out and kind of make himself vulnerable. Like I think honestly a lot of fucking bros do. And I think movies like this might be a way for like toxic dudes to look at and be like, maybe I shouldn't be such a fucking closed off dickhead all the time.
Yeah, but let's be clear. This is not a movie that those toxic bros are going to like watch on their own. And if they do, they see a sex doll on the cover and they're going to watch it thinking that it's a comedy and they're going to turn it off when they realize it's not.
I think, yeah, this is a Trojan horse, dude. I think those toxic bros are going to see the sex doll and they'll be like, hell yeah, this is going to be like old school. And then they watch it and it's not. And they learn something.
I feel
movie,
like
yeah.
I do want to make a delineation there. I feel like there's a separation or like a clarification that needs to be made on the toxic bros comment, because like I feel like toxic boys are generally kind of emotionally open, but especially with their ilk, but not incel bros, there's a deviation for the toxicity that I'm kind of I don't know which aspect
I mean,
you mean there?
I mean, I think people talk about kind of how patriarchy also affects men. I mean, obviously not in the same way at all, but we are kind of upheld to kind of act a certain way and act emotionally distant. I mean, there is there's tenets of manliness where you don't talk about your feelings or you don't kind of approach things in a way that's vulnerable and open. And I think men are encouraged to be closed off and to kind of be stoic And I think Ryan Gosling's character is internalizing those aspects, fully in a lot of times, and he's kind of closing himself off. I mean, how many older dudes do you know, maybe your own fathers or grandfathers, that kind of just go in the garage when they're mad and don't deal with anything, or maybe they turn to another shitty circumstance. So, like, I think maybe in that sense that Ryan Gosling doesn't really, his characters don't know how to navigate that stuff, and sometimes his journey is to how to, see how to approach that.
I agree. I thought you maybe were going a different way with the toxic masculinity, but so I have a point, and we're gonna get there. I think a problem with a lot of male relationships nowadays, or at least maybe not say relationship, a lot of men, maybe not so much in the last few years, but men found their relationships with other men to be not very like emotionally fulfilling. Right? Like, you're not allowed to talk about your feelings. You can't talk about serious things. You can only talk about like manly stuff like sports. One time, not too long ago, a couple years, maybe a year and a half ago, I was at a party at a friend's house here, and all the boys were downstairs. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll go downstairs and see what the guys are hanging out doing. So I went downstairs, and they're just talking about football.
Right.
Like, for a long time, and they'll be like, hey, remember this guy? And everybody like, oh yeah, yeah. Remember this guy? Oh yeah. I'm like, I'm going back upstairs. But I feel like a lot of men don't get emotional depth in their relationships with other men. And this is a stereotype. I should say some men. And so when they talk to a woman for the first time, and the woman is like doing that for them, they're like, oh, this is what love feels like. This is what like romance feels like. Yeah. But to the women, it's just friendship. And I feel like the three of us, maybe more than that, in our friend group was very open, and like I've had you guys next to me in hard times and the not hard times, and we talk about emotional stuff, and we have this like support group for each other that a lot of people don't have. A lot of people who are lonely don't have, and not so much to the toxic extent, but in this movie we had a character who didn't have those sorts of things, or he wasn't comfortable bringing them up to his brother, because even like there's a conversation about what their dad was like. And so he doesn't have anybody to talk to until he orders a sex doll and pretends it's real. Not really pretends, and thinks it's real. Yeah. And starts talking to it. And only at that point in this movie do we see him have conversations. They're one-sided conversations, but he's having them. And that process is really what makes him be able to enter society and be like a normal person who's willing to like date and be not like a pariah.
It's a conduit, right? Jace, what were you going to say?
There's a lot to respond to. It's a very deep thing. I guess I want to say that we're doing a lot of generalizing of kind of, I feel like, hot top. Obviously, there are people that, like, obviously there are issues with patriarchy. We're doing a lot of generalizations about how men are a very specific way. I've been to places, or I've been to a party, Ryan, I don't know, like your party. Like, I'm not going to go to a party with a bunch of Yuri's friends' boyfriends that I don't know and talk about my feelings with them. But a common ground for community, like in this movie, might be football. And it doesn't jive for everybody. And sure, there are ways that people, don't share their feelings, but it's obviously going to be different based on the social structure. Like, you're not just because you're in the same location with somebody doesn't mean that you're like.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
I know you agree. I just want to.
These in this circumstance, there are people who know each other.
In the short form, and it's. I think that when we have these, I think these are great conversations to be having in the podcast for our friends to listen to. But like, it's interesting because it's such short format that like.
Yeah.
We do make a lot of generalizations, and I feel like I don't know that many males that are unhealthy, and I'm lucky because I feel like I have a lot of really good friends, you included. Yeah, so right.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally fair, Jace. But I do think there is something
Jace defending the incels over here. The voice. The people's voice.
That's like,
everybody's represented.
What percent of people are incels, it's like they're just loud in an echo chamber online, right?
No, for sure. But I do think there's something to be said about like lack of connections amongst dudes. Like, even when I'm with, like, Amber will talk about when I visit with a friend, or like when I'm talking to a friend on the phone, and she'll be like, oh, what's going on with him? And I'll be like, I have no idea. We talked about.
Dude, that gets me. Like, that gets Julie will be like, they'll be like, what's Michael's job? I'll be like, I don't know.
I have no idea. And like,
What does Jace do? It's like,
yeah.
I don't know. Jace, the reason I asked you in the car the other day
Mhm.
about like what you did for work was because you've been at that job for a long time now and never told us what it was about. And Julie asks all the time.
Yeah, and sometimes like even in the beginning of this podcast, when we asked like how Jace was doing, he described as a difficult moment he had, or a moment where he was kind of
Right.
feeling angry, and we didn't know, and obviously we live far apart from each other. We don't always like talk about every single thing that happens, but I do feel
Some
like
of us
we
aren't
kind
allowed
of
to talk about everything that happens, but that's fine.
yeah, I mean, I feel like sometimes guys can leave a lot of space, and they don't broach those all the time. And maybe it's because it's out of, whatever subconscious obligation, or maybe because they just don't think of doing that all the time, And I do think that's,
Are we of adequate pedigree to
Yeah.
discuss what implications this movie had for female loneliness? Because there are probably things that we're missing.
Oh, for
Very
sure.
well
I
could
mean,
be.
I think
Yeah.
we are. I think we are for sure. But I'm talking from a perspective that I guess I think I know about.
Yeah, I want to make
just
the
as-
point that this isn't a movie just about men.
Oh, fuck no.
For
No, it's
men.
not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 It's
But
about I think what we're summing up is that it's about support systems and
Mm-hmm.
then being comfortable with approaching those support systems. I didn't feel like I needed to. I thought it was funny that you asked me how I did, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, on Friday I was like, I literally wanted to put a hole in the wall, and then I was like,
Yeah.
oh, my boss is coming from a good place, but systemically at my job they don't have the support systems that they need, and he's asking me to do more, and he's not paying me more, and that's annoying.
Yeah.
The second thing that I wanted to say, if we move past that, is I saw a lot of support, and it's hard to say that this is true because it's on the internet, that a lot of people that say that they are autistic or on the spectrum of autism like resonate with this movie and resonate with his performance in like the nonverbal, the non-physical touch.
Yeah.
And there's a pretty good, I don't know if it's pretty good. There's a website called Film Therapy. I think that's called, and it's for therapists to write like
Oh, that's
talk
amazing.
about
Yeah.
talk about film, and they mentioned talking to, like, they told the story of their interaction with this movie with somebody who had seen it, who brought it up, and the Lars's inability to have physical touch versus like their like emotional disconnect from people. And
Yeah.
huh,
What's amazing is how grounded this thing is. You see the brother-in-law or the brother character, sister-in-law, they're so caring, they're so sweet. Even though they're funny, like you can tell they really care about this guy. And when he brings in like the doll, right? And Amber and I, we're kind of laughing at that first scene where he's sitting with the doll and their faces are like, what the
Yeah,
fuck?
I
is happening?
love that scene. That scene is amazing
Yeah.
because we're going to talk more about the community and the reactions to it and everything because that's the plot
Yeah.
of the movie, and then we'll get into making some jokes. But
Yeah.
this scene, they chose to start with showing the brother and sister's reaction. They open with that shot, right? They open with the reaction shot, and their jaws are literally like open, like dropped. And then the camera does a 180. They do a reverse shot, and it shows Ryan Gosling sitting on the couch next to a sex doll.
And Ryan's face.
And my
at this
jaw
point,
dropped.
he looks so happy with
And
himself.
I was like, I literally like gasped.
Yeah, this is a character change up to this point too. He's like
180
yeah,
degrees.
he's leaning against the door
Hey,
frame.
got somebody in the garage.
Yes, and he's super open all of a sudden, and it's like you could almost see the coping mechanism right away, where he's like, "This is a thing I'm finally excited about," and he's talking to all these people in a way he hasn't before. But you see Gus and Karen when they go into the kitchen. That scene I think is so good, where they're just like, "Holy fuck, he needs to go to the hospital right now!" Like this is a complete mental breakdown. Like and they have a really really real conversation about their brother who's mentally ill. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and I think the way they kind of deal with these things too, where it's like, instead of ostracizing Ryan Gosling's character, right? I mean, we talked about this. Like, the community surrounds him with love. They kind of really support him in a way that I think if you're living in a place like, LA, New York, any kind of major city, it wouldn't happen. But you see it when it's in a tight-knit community where people all kind of know him, and they all kind of play along. Because early on, there's a doctor who just kind of says, you need to fucking play along until
Yeah.
you know he figures this shit out.
We need to also say that like it was a conscious effort on part of the community. Like the community was told to play along, and they did it because they liked Ryan Gosling. They didn't just play along because they're a super open and like welcoming community. They said, look, we love this guy. He's one of us, and in order to support him, we have to play along. Because like there's several scenes like in the church basement when they have to actually convince people to do it, and then there's scenes like the party where characters say, you know, to a different character,
if you didn't tell me about
if you didn't
this,
tell me, I would have
freaked
freaked. So we need to say this isn't a movie about a super awesome tiny small town conservative community who's just super open and welcoming. This is a town who is caring and who has compassion towards its members and is willing to do things above and beyond that their normal routines for that. And that's what you should be doing in your community, even for things you don't understand at first.
Yeah, I think it highlights the importance of community. We're so like we talked about alienation last episode in like a really good discussion in Blade Runner about kind of how the systems we live in kind of cause atomization, right? And this is one of those cases where it's like you have community care, you have people who are kind of all mediating things together, and I think that can solve, you know, a lot. It's not like a cure-all, but it can really, really solve a lot of issues we have as individuals. I did kind of want to mention like that basement scene in the church, which I thought was so funny because like they're like, oh, he's carrying around a sex doll. He's like, Jimmy, your son gave all his money to the fucking UFO club. Like,
yeah,
your niece puts pajamas on cats or dresses on cats.
Yeah. And I think, like tons of people have like
Weird.
different mental, like different weird
I gave a
quirks
lot
or,
of money
you know.
to the UFO club, and you guys haven't ostracized me.
Yeah, we
Ryan
keep Ryan
fucking
around.
loves Sasquatch, man, to a weird amount.
Yeah.
Keep
there's
squatching,
Sasquatch
bro.
sticker. I read that to help Ryan Gosling stay in character, they treated the doll like a real person on the set. Like they actually dressed her
she had her own
privately.
trailer, and
Yeah.
like she wouldn't be on the set. They didn't just like throw her off the side of the screen out of frame. They like put her away.
Yeah.
What I do like. I think Ryan acted his ass off in this movie,
Thanks.
and I love the quirks that you see that like not really to focus on. Like obviously there's the mental illness aspect of it, but he's very regimented. He has probably selective, I don't know if it's eating in front of people, but it could be a selective eating disorder. In both of the times we get meal, I think we see him eating like white bread sandwiches the two times we see him actually eating on his own. And when he's presented meals, it's really funny because there's this just smattering of different types of things on the plate. But two different sets of shoes, outdoor shoes and indoor shoes that he's like very conscious of. The list goes
Attachment
on.
to the blanket too.
For these, so he like really acted out all of these character qualities, and I think they were really quiet and well done, but really important to all the scenes that we saw to get us to know this character. And the scene that like made me, I cried 3 times in this movie, and the scene that impacted me the most was probably 3/4 of the way through the film. Bianca is being brought weekly to the doctor to have checkups because she's ill. And this is really the way for the doctor to spend time with Ryan and understand what he's going through. And
she's so good in this, by the way. That the Patricia
phenomenal.
Clarkson, she's so good. Yeah.
And we get to the point where she kind of asks, I think we're broaching an emotional barrier and it breaks down, and he lets known that he like really loves his sister-in-law who's pregnant. And the changes in his life that led up to this are his father dying and his sister-in-law becoming pregnant. And his mom died when he was born. And during childbirth. And he's deathly afraid that his sister-in-law is going to die. And he obviously is having trouble sharing his emotions, but at the same time, through this whole movie, Bianca is a mirror to him. She's religious. Her parents died when she was young, like all these things. And her, I think, becoming embedded in the community was helping him become embedded in the community. Like she was the reason he went to that party.
Yeah.
Bianca was the reason for a lot of things. And that scene when he got emotional with the doctor and they talked about essentially the loss of his parents and kind of we get the realization of what his character's going through. It wasn't what I was expecting to be watching last night.
Yeah, that scene was
I agree, Jay. So I thought that for the up until then in the movie, he didn't like his sister-in-law, or that he was kind of grossed out maybe about the idea of her being pregnant and stuff. And then we get that scene, and for me, it was the hourglass was like totally flipped over, and I had to completely rethink the rest of the movie. So I agree, that was super, super impactful. And in the same scene, I made a very, very dumb realization. I was like, oh, the doctor visits are for him. I didn't realize that the doctor visits were for him until
okay. I see,
three-quarters of the way.
Oh my God, right. You thought she was treating the doll for real?
Well, I was like, oh, I get it. To convince him that the doll, she's gonna have to bring him in, or he's gonna have to bring her in every week, because she's like validating his concerns about this being ill. And I was like, why are they just leaving Bianca in the other room? They could like bring her in this more comfortably furnished room. Oh, he's the patient right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
and it's so good. She brings him into her personal back room. She's like, "Oh, let her rest. Let's just make small talk."
Yeah,
and
keep me company.
She's taking. Yeah,
I was like, "That's a good idea, Doctor. Otherwise, you would get lonely."
It's good. And Jace, I liked that scene too because Ryan Gosling has a panic attack in that scene. That shit was really real. Like, that was almost like kind of too much. And I think Ryan kind of taps into something that's like, it's almost like method or something. Like he really lives in these roles, and you can feel it in the scene. That scene at the party, like you guys talked about, where he rolls up in the chair. I also liked that little bit he does right before he goes through the door, where he kind of looks down and takes a breath, and he's like, oh fuck. Like you kind of feel that feeling of, he's like, I'm about to go to a party right now. And there's a song by Talking Heads that I love. I think I told Ryan about it once. Like, anytime I go to a party, when This Must Be the Place by Talking Heads plays, I think that's like a cool party. It's a great needle drop. I heard Ryan Gosling picked that song for the scene, and he played the Talking Heads thing. And that song is about being at a party and feeling like, is this the place where I'm supposed to have fun? Like, I feel totally out of place here. And I think like it added so many layers of feeling out of place. He's there with the doll. Everyone's looking at him and staring at him, and he's just trying to be normal and trying to have a good time. It's a good scene.
That song for me is Higher by Creed.
Can you take
me higher? I've been listening to that a lot recently just because it's become the topic of a lot of weightlifting and gym bro memes.
I put it on my Halloween playlist, and I was during my party, and I was sitting there waiting for it to come on.
It's like a time bomb. I mean, did you guys see that? You probably saw that on Reddit, right? Like during the Thanksgiving NFL game, the halftime where Creed plays. Have you guys seen that?
I mean, I've seen clips of the performance on Instagram.
Yeah, they're like, this is peak right here. And it's like the NFL halftime, and Creed is just playing, and people are flying on ropes through the air and shit, and it's incredible. And I'm on a shoegaze subreddit. People are like, you know what? This is not too far off from like Hum and other really great shoegaze bands. People are like, get fucked, but you're right. This is great. This song's great. Anyways, you kind of go throughout the movie. There's different scenes like this, right, where people are kind of doing this exercise of acceptance with Ryan. They're giving Bianca jobs, trying to, I think, somewhat separate him so he can be independent, but also, I think, feed into his thing of like, hey, we're all going to kind of bring Bianca into our life and our world so that we can bring you in too. There's one scene, though, where he's chopping wood in the back in the dark.
Yes.
Where I was kind of on needles. I was on pins and needles. I was like,
he was mad.
The thing I love about this movie is after the first 20 minutes, after they've decided to accept her into their world, you could play this as a normal movie. You could distract someone that you're watching it with every time the sex doll's on screen and be like, hey buddy, how's it going? Look at me do this weird trick. I just got this Rubik's Cube. And get them to look away from the TV, and then they could look back and think he's actually talking about a woman from Brazil who he met on the internet and is now like getting into his small town, because they get in a fight because Bianca has some club thing that she's supposed to be doing, and he just wants to play Scrabble with her.
Yeah. And
then it blows up into this whole thing where we have the actual, like, kind of the emotional turn in the movie. And, John, you can go on if you have a topic about it. But I do agree. Yeah. I totally love that scene, and it reminds me of, like, there's a couple movies where the point of the movie is that the main character is never shown. everybody just talks about him. And this movie is kind of like that. Everybody has their own life with Bianca, and she's kind of a real person at this point.
I did like that aspect in this movie too. And to kind of, I don't know if this is like the emotional turn you're talking about, but like when Margot kind of comes in, I think it kind of changes the equation a bit. Because Margot's introduced as a love interest. That's the one where he throws the flowers away as soon as he sees her. He's so terrified. It's almost like in elementary school where you have like someone who has a crush on you and you maybe have the same, but you don't know how to do it. You kind of run away and call him gross. And Ryan is very, very much like that. There's that scene where he's doing CPR on her teddy bear. That's like so sweet. And he's talking to Bianca, and she invites him to go bowling. And you're just kind of like, please,
No.
like, and I'm kind of like, please say yes. Like, please.
I'm like, please say no. What would Bianca think?
As
And,
friends. Bianca was busy.
Bianca was busy. He said after he drops her off, Bianca's very cool about him having other friends. And
he even says, I don't want you to get the wrong idea.
Yeah. And I love that bowling scene. First of all, his physical comedy, I think, is so fucking underrated throughout his whole career. Him bowling into like 2 lanes over, I think was so funny. I laughed out loud. And then you see those bros from the town,
Yes.
right? They roll up, and you think they're going to bully him.
Oh, my heart was racing.
You're
My
like,
heart was just because they're like, hey, is that Lars? And they looked
Yeah.
around, and I was like, oh no, they see his brother's not with him.
Gus's coworkers.
They could beat him up.
Or just like give him shit and just like
Yeah.
make fun of him.
Like kind of Stephen King bully kind of thing.
But instead they join the
Record
bowling
scratch.
Yeah, they're all high-fiving and just hanging out.
And
Yeah.
that's that point we realized that like he's a person now. He's not I don't want to say popular because they're not in high school, but like he's a member of the community and he has friends and everything now because of his sex doll.
Yeah. And that kind of feeds into like the conduit. They said he's decompensating, and like this was maybe his brain's subconscious way to break that barrier.
Decompensating?
That's what the word they used in the movie. I think it's compensating, honestly. But she said he's decompensating in the scene with his brother and sister. I've never heard that term in my life before.
This is also, I think this is the turning point for his character through the sessions with the doctor. Notes that another reason he's uncomfortable around his sister-in-law is that she likes to hug people. And a portion of what Ryan Gosling, Lars, deals with is that he's very uncomfortable with physical touch because the sensation of it feels like causes pain.
Yeah.
So the doctor is trying to help him work through this. And what I really like about the bowling scene, one, is I went bowling like a week ago, and I'm into bowling right now.
Hell yeah.
But
I went bowling a week ago. I'm into bowling right now.
Yeah. He all the high fives.
That's like a line that a character in a movie would say.
Listen, I'm like this close to buying a bowling ball right now. So
Hell yeah.
I needed this scene in this movie because I was like, it came on. I'm like, +1.
Fuck yeah.
I think the high fives were really. I think they were. This was a midpoint to a payoff where Ryan Gosling kept watching everyone bowl and then give high fives. And it looked almost like physically they weren't trying to like say anything about it, but like he almost wanted to like, it seemed like he was about to broach the high five barrier. And at the end of this, I think it's at the end of this scene, he shakes Margot's hand. And that's the first time I think she walks away. He looks at his hand that you can kind of tell that he didn't feel any pain. And
Yeah.
it's the only other person that does that for him is Bianca. So we get a huge payoff and bowling
Yeah.
and great physical comedy.
Double whammy.
It's
Triple
a
whammy.
great fucking scene. I love when he knocks the pins down like for the first time and you see him just kind of nod to himself. And it's like you just see this moment of victory for him. And I think it kind of builds towards like Bianca's death, right? Because he's starting to form all these bonds and it's almost like his brain's like, you don't need this anymore, right? And he's kind of like, Bianca's sick and she won't talk to me. And you have a scene that's like where he's acting so, I think for me, like acting so well and so distraught, it's almost upsetting to watch. Where he's like really, really fucked up about this. Like it's like a real ass person to him.
And when he puts her in the lake,
Yeah.
I was like, no, like what is he doing? I've seen this movie before, but I was like, what is he doing? Is he gonna drown her? Like is he
Jesus.
Yeah,
he,
that's
like-
what I was thinking too.
is he gonna have is he gonna snap? And then that scene was kind of preceded by the townsfolk each calling each other and telling each other that Bianca's sick, completely earnestly.
Yeah.
They people would call each other for the only purpose of saying that Bianca is sick. First off, Bianca's not sick, right? So these people are not. They're like they care about. They're essentially saying like something is going on with Ryan Gosling's character. Some Lars, I guess. Something is going on with Lars, and we all care about him. You need to know, but we're not even gonna say that. We're gonna say that Bianca's sick.
Right. I love it was unsaid.
Yeah.
And I think that shows more compassion from everybody. And the scene where the granny's like knitting with the casseroles, I think with Ryan at near the end, after Bianca dies.
This is what we do when people get sick.
It's like, yeah. And
Was she dead there?
Or I guess spoilers, she dies, but she's about to die in the movie. Yeah, and that's just another thing with like community, just being there for each other.
Did you guys
don't
notice?
Have to be alone. Yeah.
Did you guys notice the photo at the funeral?
What was the photo?
There's a photo of Bianca next to the casket, like at a normal funeral.
Oh.
They buried her. I mean, what?
Yeah, they put her in the casket and everything. But like the joke being that at some point she sat for a portrait.
Yeah.
And then they're like, we got to actually put a photo of her out there.
And like they buried a piece of plastic like that, and also just I had a real ass ambulance crew roll up. They're like, yeah, we got time. Yeah, we can fucking pick up a sex doll. And they have like machines hooked up to her, and they're like, come on, we gotta go stat. And like they're doing all this theater, and I'm like, okay, that was a $6,000 car ride. And it's really touching. And then at the funeral, I guess it's kind of the end. It's you see Margot kind of standing there with Lars, kind of after all of that, and she's like still playing along, and Lars asks her if she wants to go for a walk, and it's kind of like a glimmer of hope of being like, maybe now he can make some connection.
Could you imagine? Stay with me for a minute. I'm gonna paint a picture.
Yeah. Okay.
Put yourself in this situation.
Okay.
You live in a small town.
Yeah.
There's a guy you work with that you maybe thought something might work like romantically.
Yeah.
But he ended up falling in love with a sex doll and is just going through a delusion, thinking it's a real person. The whole community is rallied around him. It's this whole thing. You still talk to him. You're totally down with it. This is great. We need to get this person the help they need.
Yeah.
And the community kind of rocks that for a while. A couple months later, you invite him to go bowling. He touches your hand. First time he's ever touched a human being. And then the sex doll gets sick. And the sex doll dies. And so they spend thousands of dollars at the hospital and at the funeral parlor and digging a grave and buying a headstone and everything. And you're sitting there and you're thinking, is this all for me? Right? Like, is this because I asked him to go bowling?
Oh.
Wait.
Did I kill the doll?
Yeah. Is this performance for me? Like, is he going through all these steps to get rid of her so that he can ask me out or go out with me? Should I not have asked him to go bowling? Did I ruin his family finances for the next 3 generations?
I don't think insurance is going to bill for sex doll.
That was pro bono.
Transportation. I think that's all pro bono. I think the funeral guy's like, you know what? We got a fucking empty lot right here.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to get into the meter?
Yeah.
The meters?
Sure.
This is the Gosometer? The Gosometer?
Nope, Gosometer.
How Ryan Gosling was this movie? How many quacks was this movie?
It's ducks. It's ducks.
Yeah, Goslings are ducks, aren't they?
They're geese.
I thought they were baby geese. Yeah.
What sound do
Honk.
geese make? Honk. How many honks are in this movie? I think, boy, let me run through my list real quick. I'm just gonna go through a mental list. Okay, you've got the whole. I think unrequited love is, I think, an aspect of Ryan Gosling. I've talked about this before. He loves a doll who is not, I think, in a real sense, capable of loving, but I think it's real to him, and I do think
she said she wouldn't marry him.
That's true.
And then she dies.
Oh, we missed the wouldn't marry me part. Oh man,
that's unrequited.
Oh.
I think that, okay, check. I think check right there. He sings in this movie in a really bizarre operatic scene where he's doing the L is from the way you look at me, that whole thing. That's going to get a point. Cool jacket. I think he has a really cool retro jacket. I like that jacket. That's going to get another point for me. No shirtless scene in this movie. He's pretty sweatered up the whole time, so that's a little bit of a knock on the thing. He doesn't need to have it, but I think in Ryan Gosling movies he definitely does have it. Socially awkward, definitely 100% check. So I think, man, this is a tough one for me because I don't know if this is necessarily what you would recognize Ryan Gosling as, right? You kind of think of him as like a hunk in these movies who's kind of misunderstood. However, I think he's playing his strengths in this thing. All right. He's definitely playing in his wheelhouse, and I think he's used to amazing effect in this thing. I'm still gonna give it, I think, a 7 on the Gosometer. I think it checks a lot of boxes, and I think if you like the Gosman, you're gonna like this thing.
This is the hardest thing I think we've ever done, character-wise. I think I'm a little higher than you. I don't know that I have a obviously volume, obviously acting ability. Some of those things we previously used for our main cast, lead actors. I think in this movie, I'm not going to have it prepared, but I think he definitely said something at least once that could have been used in The Notebook. And maybe it was when he was leaning on that door and he was like, got somebody in the garage. Got a visitor. I think I have to give this an 8. I liked I think he was given more time to shine, and he did a whole slew of, he took the things that we know him for as a physical actor and what he's recognized on screen as doing, and he was able to double and triple them in this role. So I'm pretty admiring of that, but yeah, not a hunk.
Yeah. You gave him a honk, 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 honk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree. This is really hard. I'm gonna go lower. I'm gonna say that from the get go. I think that when I imagine a Ryan Gosling movie, and when we watch the first 2 movies, he's a piece of meat, man. He's usually so I'm trying to establish like what the Gosometer is, and I don't think this movie is going to factor in that much because he's not a womanizer. He's not. I don't think that when someone's like, oh man, I want to watch a Ryan Gosling movie right now, what one should I watch? They're not going to be like, Lars and the Real Girl. They're going to watch one where he maybe takes his shirt off. And I think, yes, he did have a large quantity. So a couple points on that. He got a large quality. This is probably his best performance ever. But we'll say, so he was socially awkward. Sure. But like, I don't think this is what people look for when they look for a Ryan Gosling movie. And I'm trying to take maybe my car scale, and
as a Ryan Gosling person,
put it onto this. Yeah, as a Ryan Gosling person, is this what you are thinking of? Is this the stereotypical movie that you want to watch? And I don't know. I don't think it is. It's probably not a weird thing to say. He should have won an Oscar for this fucking movie because movie is insane. He did such a good job. But I just don't think it's going to... I don't know. The average Ryan Gosling fan hasn't seen this movie. So I think I'm going to give him a 5. I was thinking 4. You guys pushed me up.
Yeah.
But I don't think I should go to 6. I think I should make my opinion distinct from yours.
Maybe to its benefit, it's not a stereotypical Ryan Gosling. But then again, dude rarely misses. I mean, like, even though this thing was a box office flop, this thing was good. And I think he delivers the goods in everything he does, man. Yeah, as far as my movie meter, okay, this is where we're gonna think about. We're actually gonna think about this movie. All right, how do we rate this thing? Okay, separate from the Gos meter, if you could even separate this movie from our boy here, yeah, this thing's gonna be high. This surprised me. I liked this way more than I thought I would. I was expecting kind of a quirky, like a rom-com. Sometimes it's advertised as a rom-com, which I think is a little odd. Not just like this amazing movie that kind of penetrates a lot of different subjects on community and isolation, on mental health even. I think they really nail it here. I think all of the characters, the writing, it's so sincere. I love the scope of it too. You feel like you're in a small town. And I think just like the comedic beats just feel so affecting in this movie. But then it kind of makes the sweetness of the movie really sing. It's not something that's overly saccharine where you're kind of just like, oh, it's one of those wholesome movies. I think there's a lot of edges in this movie, and there's a lot of really interesting character choices. I mean, fuck. This movie really knocked it out of the park for me. I'm trying to think of any reason for me to like not give it like a 10. I mean, like I think I really enjoyed a lot of aspects here, but I think I reserve 10s I think for life-changing or just like life sculpting movies. But this one comes close. I think it is affecting, and I think for some people they can get a lot out of watching something like this. I'm going to give it a 9. I'll say 9. Fuck it. It's a great movie.
I'm gonna give it a 10.
Wow.
I think this is, I don't know. I don't see any reason why Blade Runner would have changed my life, but in different aspects to this movie, you know? Sure, that was sci-fi, but I'm thinking in foils and mirrors today. I think this is like the foil film to Blade Runner, and it's interesting that we watched it directly afterwards. And I think anyone that has listened to the whole review will know that just like that I was emotionally touched by a lot of the films. Like a lot of rom-coms, rom-drams, movies as a whole, their goal, I think we've come to agree, is to elicit an emotional response or to make you feel a certain way. And every single beat that this movie had made me feel the way I think I was supposed to. I like that they didn't make any weird, I actually do like that they didn't make any weird sex jokes about the doll.
Yeah.
Like they could have. It was really surprising that they didn't. Like there maybe one, half of one. They kind of did half of one in the office scene. And even then, the guy didn't say it. It was like the coworker that was like knew about the sex doll, but then didn't say anything about it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I thought it was, I did really enjoy the fact that they went bowling, surprisingly. I don't know. It's a fun activity.
It's a good scene. It's a great scene.
And, you know, I don't feel like I've seen a movie. I've never seen a movie about this topic. I don't think I've seen a movie trying to convey these things in the ways that it did. And if I have, it didn't have Ryan Gosling just fucking destroying the screen with a performance that like I was cringing when I saw the doll. I was like, oh god, and I was like, oh, and I was like, fuck. I'm like, oh, he's getting better. I was as emotionally invested as the people in the town were, and I think it's interesting that, you know, we talked a lot about community. I love that they were accepting. It is interesting that like maybe it is easy. Maybe it's easier to. I was thinking maybe it's easier to form a community like this when you're not in a giant city. Because, you know, I mean, a large city is a grouping of communities, but
you have to work a little harder.
You have to work a little harder. I wasn't expecting this. I really was not. And the movie finished, and I think it deserves a 10. I've already told 2 people to watch it. I don't.
Hell yeah.
So
this movie rules. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I really like this movie. I'm gonna give this movie an 8. I don't feel bad about that at all. There's not like, I agree that I think any movie that I give like an 8 to can be someone's favorite movie, right? And I think this movie could hit that pitch out of the park for some people. For me, this is my second viewing, and I remembered most of it, but it felt a little. My biggest complaint is that it felt a little slow pacing wise for me, like to sit down. Also, Julie fell asleep. So I had to watch most of this by myself, which doesn't help. So an hour 46, let's get that down to hour 35. I think a 95-minute movie here would do me a lot of good. On second Ryan. Watch. Yeah, 90-minute Ryan, that's what they call me. There's a couple points I want to make. First off, this was very beautifully shot, but meaning it wasn't shot very beautifully. They didn't set out to make you gawk at this thing like at any point in time. There's a couple scenes that were purposely set up to be completely monotone, like monochromatic. They were just like winter dead trees and leaves and pavement. That's actually, when it's a design choice, it can be done really well. And I think you can see that it's actually done well when you combat that with night scenes. When he's chopping the wood, it's very beautifully lit and shot very well. And I think that is an example. It leads me to believe that the rest of it was done on purpose. There's the line said by Gus, who is played by the guy that everybody hates from Parks and Rec, who I actually like in Parks and Rec.
Brandanowitz.
Yeah. But he said the whole movie you think that he's kind of resents his brother for kind of being a leech, or maybe not a leech is the right term, but kind of being an odd man out. He lives on the property, he lives in the garage. He's makes him feel all weird, and He has to go through society and get laughed at because his brother's dating a sex doll. But then later in the movie, we get this scene where he says, "We came back to this town after Dad died and moved into this house, and he moved out to the garage like the family dog." And it completely reframes this character. And I think that's what this movie does better than anything, is that these characters bottle up so much stuff in their lives, even about things that we're seeing in a movie. And the whole point of a movie is to unbottle things, but they keep it locked up for so long. And then, like we were talking about with toxic masculinity and culture about not being able to share your feelings, kind of after you get to know these people for an hour and 20 minutes, they start to let you in. And he lets us in that he actually has been feeling guilty this whole time. That was like seriously an impactful scene for me. I think this movie is great. I too, Jace, would recommend it to people. I don't think you have to be a certain type of person. And even if you're not the type of person where this is your normal movie, like we said at the beginning, maybe it'll make you think about some stuff. And maybe it'll make you a little bit better of a person in some ways. I don't know. Maybe movies can do that.
It's high praise when you can say a movie makes you a better person. Does it leave the world better? Which
it
is
does.
The opposite
I think
of what we said.
I think it does. Like this movie, the world's a better place for this movie existing.
We said the opposite for so many movies.
Most of them in the car movies and Matthew McConaughey movies and Ben Affleck movie might have literally changed the course of human history. You never know.
Yeah, we said. Yeah. I mean, the thing about this season is like I feel like we're gonna love like a lot of these fucking movies, which is so nice. Coming off of so many movies in a row, like even I mean, okay, we haven't seen a bad. I know they're out there. I know they're out there in the periphery.
Yeah.
But,
so this is I want to challenge Jace.
Okay.
To pick, he can pick whatever he wants.
Do we have to fucking watch Gangster Squad?
No, please.
What do you mean, no, please? We gotta watch.
It's either that or Only God Forgives, man. At this point.
No. Okay, we don't have to watch a bad movie.
We have to watch a bad movie. That was my thing. It's like we've had three.
Let me look at this.
Relative bangers.
This has Josh Brolin, Sean Penn, Emma Stone, Ryan Gosling.
I see it.
It's a fucking shitty cop movie.
It's not good.
And I think we're not going to be as angry about it as we would for Only God Forgives.
Gangster Squad is like those movies. You know how you guys ever watch like Nickelodeon commercials and maybe you bought one on mail order where they take that goo and they put it in the hot mold and you slam it down and it turns into spiders and worms and stuff?
Uh-huh.
The Gangster Squad is that, but a movie.
Look, fourth build, Giovanni Ribisi. I like this guy.
Hey, we like that guy.
Tight jawed. You know, I don't.
Okay, we can fucking do Gangster Squad.
Is this the fucking hardest fourth movie in a season we've ever had to like debate?
I'm looking at his Rotten Tomatoes list, like like ranked, you know, and like it's mostly fresh. Like it's like only the last like.
I know.
The Notebook, quote unquote, is listed as a bad movie, and I think we like kind of enjoyed a lot of it.
It's insane. The Notebook was at 54%. Well, let's watch Gangster Squad.
All right, let's do it. Cool. So, Jace, you picked Gangster Squad for the next movie. Great. I saw this in the Cub at WSU when it came out.
Oh.
It's been 11 years since I've seen this thing, so it's time for a rewatch of Gangster Squad, a sentence that no one has ever said in the history of humankind. Cool. Well, folks, join us next week. If you look, episode 4 is usually a stinker, all right? Sometimes we got to dip into the bad to appreciate the good, all right? So, Gangster Squad, join us next week. Folks, do you want to leave him with a Goslingism? A Gosling line? Okay, I guess I'll start cuz I forgot it's my movie. When
cheesy
balls
touch
me,
I
gag
horrendously
while
juggling
emotions.
That's good. That's a good line. That's a thinker.
Let's be clear. I tried to end it before Ryan shot back in with another one.
What did I say? I said
I think it's good.
The gags horrendously. I was trying to elicit a word that would
I was thinking like
stop.
those, like that bucket of cheese balls.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
My emotions.
I'm not in the mood for these.